Hi, Donna.
So we're doing this.
We are filming our first official podcast. And I'm so excited, actually, on a personal note, to take all of these conversations that we have on a daily basis and share them with anyone who might benefit. We think they're interesting.
Or people are going to think we're crazy, one or the other.
Both can be conducive to success.
So Jan not only has the best laugh, and not only does she have the best voice, but Jan is super talented. She has been a part of our team for how many years now?
4 years, 4 wonderful years.
And your role has evolved a lot through the years.
It has. I've had the privilege of working primarily in words, and that is an appropriately, I think, broad description. So whether that's blogs, conversations, outreach, relationships, that is where I've been very privileged to serve here. I'm here for very personal reasons. I had a career in the military and absolutely identify with the patient perspective of a lot of people benefiting from this technology. So one of the reasons I'm so excited, and I'm always excited to talk to you, is because the focus on people here really resonates with me, and I think the rest of the team. So it's a great place to be, and here's to another 14 million years.
So we have Hopeful News, our other podcast that's hosted more on the foundation side, and they talk a lot about the clinical research and on all of that. But we have a lot going on here on the Hope Bio side, and we're going to be talking about technology, what our cells are doing, exciting research, what the landscape of medicine is going to look like, even like regulatory, legal issues, like all the things that we touch on a daily basis.
I think it's great. And I hope others will as well, because it really brings the technology to life. That's what I leave every one of our conversations so excited about what's going on here, so hopeful for the future, and always learning something I didn't know before about the technology or ways we're using it or ways we hope to use it in the future. So if this podcast accomplishes even a little bit of that, I hope it'll be really useful for anyone listening.
For like the 5 listeners we'll have.
Well,
that's okay.
We're following Grace, the beautiful Grace, on our on the first podcast on this channel, which was stem cells for kindergartners. So that's a tough act to follow. So we'll give ourselves some grace.
All right. Well, where should we start?
I think we should start with what you're wearing.
Why am I wearing this?
Yeah, tell me about it.
Well, I wanted to title this particular episode from Starbucks to stem cells. And really, it's sort of where I started in my career, if you want to call it a career. But it also speaks to, where I think stem cells are going. And it will be as prevalent as it is when you go down the street and see a Starbucks at every corner, or anywhere in the world that you go. Stem cells will be that one day. And this podcast will be really interesting in that we're sort of following the story live as it's developing. Like, we don't have an end to the story right now. We're sort of knee deep in it. And I think it'll be fun to have a gathering, people sort of getting interested in the story and experiencing it with us, because we're doing it real time here. Yeah.
I love that, because I think that's so counter. I've had the privilege of spending time personally and professionally in higher ed, and I think that that's counter to what we sometimes do in academia and in science. We kind of wait until we think we have an answer, and then we talk about it. So to talk about it as it's going on, I think is so exciting. I think it's exciting as a person, right? To have a window into that, to be able to benefit from it, learn from it. So yeah, let's do it. Let's take that Starbucks model. So I love that you explain your time at Starbucks as the beginning of your career, because I think it is the beginning of your career. And as a mom, to a now middle schooler. I love that because I do, we try and put our kids in environments and places.
Okay, well, let's talk about this. Okay, well, no, we don't have to talk about this, but I get it. Okay, that's fine.
I think we should.
No, that's fine. That's fine. That's fine.
Well, and I think we can segue from there to the doctor point because, so now in your career, your whole inbox is full of, it's an unexpected career, right? It's an unexpected twists and turns. And one thing people may not know when they're writing or they're reaching out to you and they're calling you Dr. Chang, right, is that your qualifications are actually primarily...
Not a doctor, Jan. Not a doctor. I tell everyone I'm not a doctor. I'm not a doctor. Not a medical doctor. Not a PhD. Just regular Donna Chang.
Well, regular Donna Chang has a lot going on and a lot of lived experience that is really, really beneficial and I think creates and contributes on a daily basis to why what we do here is so unique. And also, your team is chock full of people who are doctors, right? So we have that perspective, we have that expertise, we have that influx of knowledge and insight coming in. Your vantage point is so unique. And I love that your story, in your own words, starts at Starbucks. So walk me through it. How do you get from Starbucks to stem cells?
Well, I studied, it was sort of my last job in my summer before going to college. I got my parents never let me work, I don't know if it's an Asian parent thing, but at least back when, or Korean parent thing. But my parents wouldn't let me. They wanted me to entirely focus on school. And so the first job I ever got was at Starbucks. And back then, I'm dating myself here, but back in the late 90s, Starbucks didn't do so well, like selling coffee. Like our numbers for coffee sales were actually pretty poor. And it was because we were like getting out of like the taster's choice era, or Folgers era, because we were so used to drinking watered down coffee or freeze-dried coffee. And when being exposed to real coffee, people just couldn't handle it. It was just too strong, too bitter, too blah. No one had ever seen like an espresso machine, and so it took a long time for the market to catch up. And at the time, at least in my store, I remember we spent a lot of time selling food as opposed to selling coffee because that was the one thing that people would buy. And it was a key to offsetting the bitterness of the coffee. So if you could sell both, you that's how you gained customer attraction. So anyway, I don't know, we've fallen off a tangent here, but yeah, I learned a lot during my years there. And I went off to college. I studied biotechnology. I have an undergraduate degree in human biology. So I was a pre-med student at the University of Toronto. So I went back to Canada, actually, I grew up in Canada. So I went back to Canada for undergrad. I did another major in philosophy and bioethics, actually, which is the study of ethical issues in science and medicine. Back in my day, the major topics at hand were things like euthanasia. Do we let people make their own decisions, end of life decisions? I can tell you that today, I assume that the field of bioethics is very complicated now with the technology advancements that have come along. So many issues, right, with genetic modification or stem cells, all of these things, lots of ethical issues there. But anyway, okay, so after undergrad, I then had a really hard time landing a real job. So thank you to Starbucks for keeping me around. I sort of moved my way up in managing and supervising, and really learned how to interact with customers and sort of learn the basics on marketing, at least to locals, and getting the word out, and making customers happy. So that's the extent of my business education. And then after a year of doing that, I actually ended up going to grad school, and I went back to United States for that. I was accepted to Johns Hopkins University for one of the first biotechnology master's programs. And it was really, I think, geared towards a program that would give I want to say, okay, so I was accepted into Hopkins after a year of working at Starbucks. And then at Hopkins, I entered a biotechnology program, and it was one of the first of its kind in the nation, where it would give us a broad understanding of different technologies, because biotech is it's vast, right? It's basically anything involving live cells or tissues and any kind of technology. So you can imagine the field is so big, and the only way they can build on biotechnology skill sets, because one of the major missing pieces is there may be highly technologically savvy people, but there aren't a lot of business people in that area, right? And so I think that's why that program was built, sort of to give us more of an idea of how we can grow the field and things like that. Yeah. So that was my graduate years. Yeah.
I love that. I mean, what I hear when you lay all that out is many, many, many years of being focused on people and trying to articulate and possibly even anticipate what their needs are and any barriers to those needs. And then some very real formal education in how to circumvent those barriers, right? And that's so vital in this field. So my personal passion is the translation piece. It's where the philosophy and the highly nuanced technology meet real people sitting in real chairs who have to decide if they're going to utilize that technology, right? So think of anybody. Say you get in a catastrophic accident, or you're diagnosed with a disease. You're presented with a technology, and you're trying to decide if you want to utilize that technology, if you want to access it. There's probably a logistical question that you don't know how to answer. There's probably an ethical question that you don't know how to answer, which, depending on your worldview, may have a religious or spiritual component. There's probably a medical question that you don't know how to answer. And the odds that anyone in your sphere of influence knows how to provide input on all three axes is virtually none, right? So what's so exciting to me about your background, and I think one of the reasons I like to think we get so excited to talk to one another, is we share this passion for a truly multifaceted look at a challenge, right? In this situation, it's healthcare, and how we bring this particular technology to people who really need it. And from your vantage point as the president, as CEO, it's a very logistical, practical, how do we get this to people? And in my role, it's how do we explain it to them? How do we educate them? How do we facilitate learning so people can decide, can realize, to use my personal language, can realize how much they need it, right?
And it's so critical that every person on the street know that, because yes, the technology that we're talking about and what we're working on has implications for every single person. It's not just in the scientific community. It's not just in the medical doctors. It's not just them. I think that's why we decided to do this, because we we want people to hear all of this. This is not exclusive to a certain club, and or academia or whatever. It is a conversation for everybody.
It is.
And you don't know it now, but the future of medicine will incorporate these cells, whether you like it or not. And it will be a tool that is used regularly. And we will look back on this day saying, I cannot believe it took us so long to utilize these cells, right? It's like no different than penicillin. Think about how long it was rejected before it was finally accepted. And so a lot of things are like that. And I think anything new is going to face those kinds of challenges. Yeah.
Well, and that's one area I'm very personally passionate about this organization's commitment to doing this type of research in the United States. I love our country, served our country, and I'm so proud of the people I know who are still serving. But this is an area where there are other countries where it's easier to access cell therapies, right? And there are a lot of reasons for that, and I don't want to segue the conversation there yet. But it is an area where I think we can really improve, and that it's vital that we do so to create that healthcare future that you mentioned, which is so incredibly exciting and full of promise. But committing to doing that work in the United States from the beginning is a very significant commitment. It's one I can get behind. It's one I think a lot of people can get behind. And it's important. It's very important, and it's quite unique.
Yeah, and that is the beauty of the United States, right? Yes. We are the leaders in innovation. Great ideas start here. In medicine, a lot of things are developed here and then are delivered all over the place. Why it's cheaper all over the place, I don't know. And probably another 5 episodes need to be dedicated to that. But that's the reality, right? That we make the best stuff and we have the best heads. When I see rooms full of, all of them are the smartest people in the room. It's just incredible, the amount of ingenuity that we have here in America, the smorgasbord of talents that we have.
Yes. But I also get really excited anytime we have someone walk through the doors who says, I thought I had to go overseas to be able to access technology like this. Like, I had no idea that this was available in the US, right? And so that is so germane to what we're doing, is accessibility for Americans right here in the US.
Right.
That's a big commitment.
So Jan, you have to circle us back to where we were.
Circle us back to where we were. Okay. I promised I would, and then we got distracted, which this is just like our real conversations. P.S. Okay. So we've talked about your education, your time at Hopkins, and the value that it has, how innovative that program was. Were you able to carry that training into the world and build a career utilizing what you learned there?
So the end of the story is yes. The beginning of the story is sort of it didn't look so great, only because I spend a lot of time talking to students that are studying like biology and basic sciences and biotechnology. The problem that we have when we graduate is that we are experts in nothing. We've spent a lot of time, we have very expensive brains, but we are not specialized in any one thing. So when it comes to being valuable in a company setting, there's really nothing you can offer because your basic knowledge doesn't really get you anywhere. Well, so a lot of the path, there are opportunities that come up, and that's really what happened to me. I was given an opportunity after, I think, like towards the last week of grad school. A professor invited me to a conference, and of course I didn't understand anything going on at this conference, and it was geared towards life sciences, the field of life sciences, and there were economic developers from the state there, and so I was in the state of Maryland. And so it was the state of Maryland hosted event. And I never knew what an economic developer was. And for those that don't know, it's essentially a group of people either on a state level or government, state or county or city level, that go out and they go scout technologies or industries, in specific industries, to bring companies into their respective states. Like you hear about a lot of companies moving from one state to another. So most of the time that is initiated by some like poachers, and they're government funded poachers that go out and look for these technologies to bring in so that they can spur economic growth, that if they invest in these technologies, that they will employ more people, and then that's how cities build, right? You want good businesses and good technologies. So the state of Maryland, when I joined, was very a prominent state, like a hub for biotechnology. A lot of biotechnology companies there. And one of the selling points was that it's close to FDA, What more do you need? You want to be close to FDA. The question is, do you really want to be close to FDA? So anyway, so we, the state had been really investing heavily in growing it. And I guess there was an opportunity that had opened up in that department, and they had asked if I would be open to interview for that. I was actually going to interview as an intern. They wanted me to wrap gifts. But anyway, this opening had come up, and they said, look, for this particular job, you need to be able to engage with people, and you have to be able to sell people on the state, and you need basic knowledge on what they're talking about, whatever technology it is. And so the good thing is that I have little knowledge on everything. And so turned out that I did have a skill set to identify good technologies. And I think my dad, it was in technology. So I grew up listening to new and upcoming things. I was always interested in that. And so I think whenever you have an interest in something, it makes life easier, because you invest more time into learning. And I think that's when I became exposed to the world of stem cells. I actually didn't learn anything about cells in grad school so much. Just cell biology I knew a lot about, but not actual like stem cell applications. And it wasn't until I was exposed to what was going on overseas. I saw companies. I would attend a lot of conferences and just hear about different technologies all over the world. And stem cells were so intriguing to me because even at that time, and this is sort of in the mid 2000s, you already saw human applications of stem cells. And it just started opening your eyes as to, what this might just really be something, So like at a cellular level, we know that at a cellular level, these cells can do A, B, and C. And so you get very excited on that. But when we talk about translation, like taking those biological functions that happen at a cellular level and then see those things happen in an actual human being, those are two different things, right? You go from seeing it in a lab and seeing it through a microscope, then you go through seeing it in an animal, and 9 times out of 10, something happens in a mouse, doesn't really translate into a human. But to see this transition going from what we knew conceptually into an animal and then into a human, and even in the early days when you saw like a few humans like actually benefiting from it, it got you really excited because there were real answers to problems that we never had answers to before, right? Like, how do you heal degeneration? the only way is by regeneration. But there was no real way to do that, before. And so as technology has been evolving, we've been, it's just been really exciting to see how these technologies are actually coming into play. Like we're seeing the power of regeneration, and we're just at the very beginning of it. So it's very exciting.
As excited, and I love hearing that excitement because it translates into the work. And as excited as you feel about seeing the technology develop, that's how excited I feel when I look at Hope Bio's business model and the very unique potential of Hope Bio, in no small part to your own lived experience and professional experience, the unique potential of Hope Bio to actually bring these solutions to large populations of people, because most of the work that's going on in cell therapy is going on in labs, and it's extremely expensive, and it requires people with very specific skill sets and degrees and years of experience to create these sorts of treatments and products and drugs. And what's developing here is something that's scalable, right? From a business standpoint, from a logistical standpoint, and I'm going to don my military officer hat here, this is a viable solution with potential to reach an unlimited number of people. And so to see your excitement for, hey, we developed this solution through animal work and into humans, that's how I feel when I look at the business model. You go, wow, it's promising and there's potential to use it. We can actually use this and we can create this for more people. This isn't an isolated academic idea, which has its own kind of value, but an isolated academic idea with a multi-million-dollar price tag doesn't have practical value to a hurting person sitting in a chair in need right now. What Hope Bio creates has potential for that person. And it's exciting. It's the best word, and it's the word we use over and over when we talk to each other about these topics, but it's the most true word. It's exciting.
Yeah. It's certainly an exciting time to be in this. Yeah. Because when we started, it was like anything that you start. Well, Hope Bio, none of us are entrepreneurs. Right? You know this, yes. None of us are entrepreneurs. I wish I could take credit for the technology. I can't at all. I have nothing to do with the development of the technology. That the brains behind that's Mr. Park, our other partner. But starting a company was really a means to an end, right? It was identifying that in order to make real impact, the technology has to be accessible. It doesn't matter if you have the best thing on earth if no one can afford it or if no one can access it, right? And in the United States, a lot of medicines are expensive, and this is why we have insurance, and insurance pays for it. In Texas, they call it insurance. So I will go back and forth. So in order, and even with insurance paying for things, a lot of times it's still very expensive. But the way we try and make things affordable in this broken system we have is for insurance to take care of these medicines. And at the beginning, any new medicine is always, it's at its peak. It's very, very expensive. Well, even if you have a 20% copay, the kinds of medicines that are being developed right now, like the real, technologically most advanced, like gene therapies, right? There's a gene therapy that everyone knows about for SMA system. So the gene therapy that everyone knows about, it has a $2 million price tag, for SMA. That is a huge price tag. And even if insurance can cover a lot of it, it's still very, very expensive. And so you have an accessibility issue. We're in an era where companies will announce that they have FDA approval and their stock price goes down. And it's because they realize their market is not as big as what they thought it could be because of the ability to be able to afford a drug. So there's a lot of, I think that's the biggest challenge when it comes to the development. A lot of times we focus on, okay, well, we want to make sure that you want to make sure you have a drug that works. Okay, that's number one. But you can't ignore, or you can't just work in that silo, because if you work with that mindset, then chances are you're going to spend a lot of money and you will end up with a product that, again, has accessibility issues. So you got to do both at the same time. And that's where innovation, you have to be able to innovate on both sides. Yeah. But yeah, so when I say we started Hope Bio as a means to an end, the end was to have an accessible product. And in order to do that, you need insurance to cover it. And insurance will only cover products that are FDA approved. So what is this thing called FDA approval? Well, you need to file some applications, and either you're going to be a university or a company. And so that's really what it came down to. It's like, okay, so in order to do this, we need an entity. So yeah. But the story is really a group of passionate people coming together and saying, you have an inventor of a technology who says, this is what I see for the technology that I've developed. This is what I want for it. And then people coming alongside and saying, I trust in that vision and I share in that vision and we'll do it together. And then, of course, you need the money part, right? You need the guy that's crazy enough to fund it and say, yeah, it's just an idea. It's a crazy idea, right? It's not a business because, it's not a business in the sense that it's not your traditional investment. Okay, when's my return? Oh, we have no idea. And we have no idea what that looks like because we're not thinking about that. You really shouldn't build a business that way. But
I have to tell you.
But that's the reality of how Hope Bio started, right?
That's the reality. And that's one of my favorite parts of the story, which there's no way we can convey it in a podcast, but we're working on ways to convey it over time in other ways. The people who have come alongside this vision, alongside the technology and the heart. I've had the privilege of working in development in a variety of nonprofit and commercial settings for more than a decade. I've never seen anything like this, like the people who come alongside Hope. And it's such testament to unlimited potential, I think, and American ingenuity, right? Because, is it like any business model I've ever been taught in any school? Absolutely not, And it's thriving and it works and it grows because people come alongside it. It is so people-centered, which is such a buzzword these days. It's almost frustrating to read about it. Well, it's a people-centric, whatever, organization, company, team, entity. But here it's true in ways that are undeniable. And you feel that, and you feel that kind of continued culture of, well, let's try things. Let's try things. How many possible ways can we pursue to get this technology to people who need it? Let's try things, right? And that's a real culture of innovation, which is really exciting to be around.
Yeah, it's not your typical story, for sure. And I know business schools ask us, and they try and like figure out what the roadmap is. It's like this, it lots of twists and turns. And at the end of the day, I am a person of faith. I know that this and my family, we all know that all of this is God direct. This is God's pet project.
Yes.
And the humor behind it all is that it's not man-made, right? The medicine that we make here, we essentially are the packagers of the medicine. We're not the true, the cells that are actually being packaged are cells that come from our own bodies. Like our own bodies make them. And we simply take them out and package them in a different way. But the beauty is that they are designed perfectly, and they're in our bodies to begin with. And so it's like, God has a sense of humor, right?
Yes, and a beautiful synchronicity. Beautiful synchronicity and undeniable. And I think this technology and what we experience here on a daily basis is an incredible apologetic, incredible testament.
Yeah.
To an undeniable glory.
I agree. I couldn't agree more. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you have to circle us back somewhere.
Okay. I thought, okay, where should we? Because honestly, Donna, this is what it's like when we talk to each other. We end up, God is great. Okay, see you tomorrow. I mean, gosh, there are so many things we could talk about. We could, as parents, we work here for our kids. We work here for a healthcare future for our kids, and that's extraordinarily important.
Yeah, because first and foremost, Jan, we're moms, right?
Woot, woot. Back to school this week.
Thank God for that. Now we can really do some work. Yeah.
Now we can get stuff done.
Yeah. And it's so funny, when you now in the whole stem cell era that we live in, think about all the ads you see regarding stem cells, and it's always like an older person, either like playing golf or something, right? That's the ad for stem cells, and so it's always been directed towards an older group. And granted, older people have more issues, health issues, so that's who you would market to, right? That's who they're specifically marketing to. But you're right. The technology that we are developing here today is for the next generation. Yes. I would love to have access to my own cells. And yes, we're working towards that. I would love to be able to see us being able to access our cells for at least in the foreseeable future, to treat Alzheimer's, or maybe to even prevent it, or any of these chronic diseases. Our joints, like I wake up with back pain, joint pain. Like, really, do we need to be doing this, right? Is that a problem that we could solve today? Probably so, but really our kids. Where is this technology going to go? And by the time right now, I have 6-year-old twins, and by the time they're 30 years old, will they have regular access for their cells? Gosh, I hope so.
I hope so.
And that would change everything we know about medicine, right? Yeah.
It would solve a lot of problems. It would not only change an individual experience of healthcare, but it would change the community-based experience of healthcare, because, you look at the price tag on preventative cell therapy versus the price tag on any of the diseases and conditions that we work with here, multiple sclerosis, Parkinson's, lupus, these long-term things with very real fiscal and social burdens on our healthcare system. There's potential in preventative use of this technology for dramatically alleviating much of that burden. And so, I think about a future not only where my daughter, is herself healthy, but she's not bogged down by some of the tax implications, some of the insurance implications of this great fiscal load of healthcare, right? We could be part of that solution. What's being built here, what exists here, can be part of that solution. We just have to walk through the whole pathway, right? To get the appropriate authorizations, to have the appropriate regulatory approvals to make it accessible.
Right.
But when I said earlier that was a big commitment, it's a big commitment. And quite frankly, most organizations don't walk that entire path. They get burnt out or they get distracted, and that's where, it's unusual to hear us talk about such personal reasons, to hear people working in biotechnology talk about such personal reasons for why they're here. But I think it's vital because it's those deeply personal areas of passion that carry each one of us.
It has to be, Jan, because we don't pay a lot.
Should we laugh at that? Is that the appropriate response?
None of us here are here for money. I can speak to that. None of us are here for money.
Are we laughing too hard? Yeah, well, no, we're not. We're not, but we're...
We are definitely in startup mode.
Yes.
Yes.
But so was Starbucks once upon a time.
That's right. That's right. And Starbucks and its ability to translate a great product across every store, right? Again, on a global level, wherever you go, you order a Frappuccino, you're going to get that product.
Yes.
There might be slight differences, but you get that. And so that ability to translate that recipe over and over and over again, it's one of the reasons why great restaurants fail, right? Because when they go to the next location, it's just not the same. Or even the same location, keeping the food consistent every single time is so difficult. Think about biological products, the products that we make here, living cells from person to person. Jan, your cells are different from my cells, but yet we're considered the same drug, right? Are we? Fundamentally, are we? And how will we achieve the same result? Because the assumption is that we're the same, right? That we're all receiving the same drug. I mean, after all, we have to know what the drug is because we have to be able to explain how it works, right? So when you have that level of complexity at a cellular level, and now you have to translate that, because if you really want to scale it, and we're not talking just about scaling a manufacturing operation. We're talking about accessibility on a global level. If one day everyone is to have access, then how do you make sure that you get that same level of quality and function on a cellular level? I mean, it's just mind-blowing, right? And so many people have to come along this journey to problem solve for all of these things. The basis is to have the best technology you can possibly make, a robust enough technology that can be built for that kind of scale up. And so hope starts here, right? It starts with a great platform, and that's what we're trying to do. We're just building upon it. So 4 years ago, we started the Hope Biosciences Research Foundation, and that's for another conversation altogether.
Yes.
And that was really for immediate access for people who really need it, people who would never qualify for a clinical trial. They run clinical trials as well, but also to go through the regulatory process, another FDA pathway to get access to cells for people who really need them. But at the same time, collecting necessary data, because we have to learn. We have to learn from every single case, right? It starts with a single patient and then grows from that. So think about our Parkinson's program. Yeah. It started with one single expanded access. It's one of those like impossible cases that if this person improved, then man, we might really be onto something. And it was exactly that. We started with one, we documented, we had very good documented efficacy, and then we moved on to a bigger trial. And then from there, a bigger trial. And now we've got 7 clinical trials in Parkinson's?
We do, in both autologous and allogeneic, so using our own and using donor stem cells, including the world's only study in patients, over age 76 into their 90s. But what I love about that too is it has the same atmosphere, it has the same energy as this conversation does, right? Because we talk to every single one of our patients. We talk to them in the beginning, throughout their experience, at the end, of their experience receiving cell therapy, and we ask them, what was it like? How are you feeling? What are you benefiting from? How do you think we could be better? Right? And we learn from every one of their stories and experiences. Yeah, hope is here. It doesn't just start here, it is here. And there's that word again, it's exciting.
Yeah.
Okay, so economic development was this incredible platform further into the working world of biotechnology. What happened next?
Lots of years working in industry. I did work for stem cell research companies, both overseas and here, and was able to see a lot of things and also identify what was really missing. Again, having a great cell, again, the cells are in our bodies, so they're not manufactured per se, but the ability to get these cells to patients in a safe and effective manner that's the translation piece. And I felt that there were a lot of areas that we could improve upon that from a quality standpoint, an efficiency standpoint, and cost standpoint. So it was really focusing on that and doing the regulations, going through the regulatory process correctly. I mean, if you think about how many decades we are now from the first time an MSC was a mesenchymal stem cell, those are the stem cells that we work with, was discovered. By now there should be many products, but I think going through the actual regulatory process to prove out the efficacy and safety and of these sorts of products has still been lacking in a lot of ways. So there needs to be a lot more work done in that arena, and I think that's what we've been focused on here at Hope Bio, and yeah, it's turns out it's my life's passion, right? It's what I was born to do. Yeah.
So your professional life's passion, you see that, how do you see that reflected in your personal life? You've mentioned before, you're a mom, right? What do you hope that your kids will learn being around? And I use that term quite literally, around. Grace was here at our last podcast. The kids see the office. Mom works in science. I mean, what do you hope that they'll take, not just benefiting from the technology?
They are purposely doing this to us. It's like people don't want us to talk.
Yeah. They don't.
People do not want us to talk.
That's enough. It's a conspiracy.
You should stop now. The best stuff is going to come out. Just watch.
Okay. So yeah, there are. I mean, there are a lot of, as you said, there are a lot of products out there. There's a lot of work going on in the cell therapy world. What exactly does Hope Bio do, and what makes it different? Yeah. So essentially, Hope Bio has built a core technology. Okay. It's not so much focused on a particular disease. It's focused on the cells itself. Okay. So we all have different cells, and the quality of our cells are all different. So what we need to do is first find the right cell. So our bodies contain mesenchymal stem cells. Those are the particular stem cells that we produce here at Hope Bio. And these cells
need to be multiplied outside of the body, because as we age, as we face illness, we just don't have a lot of these cells in circulation. So we want to return back to the body what it once had, but in very high quantities. Because again, you want to have a good effect. To have a good effect, you need the right dose. So what we do here is we take those cells from you and we make large quantities. Our authorized dose is 200 million cells. That's what we return back to an adult each time we give an infusion. But the beauty of the technology is that we can, once we have the cells from you to begin with, we can remake these cells over and over and over again. And we can make over 1,000 doses from a single tablespoon of fat. So that's what we use. A single tablespoon of fat is all we use to isolate the right mesenchymal stem cells. And people get confused all the time. They say, oh, well, fat, that sounds terribly like unscientific. Well, you don't have to worry about that. That's the one thing you would like to give us. And that is the reality of it. Fat tissue is a great disposable source that everyone is happy to pass along. And in that fat, there are always healthy, good mesenchymal stem cells. And the reason is because those cells are there to keep your fat there in place from the beginning. So that's why we use fat. And again, from a single tablespoon of fat, we make more cells than anyone else can. And I would say from documented, we are far and above the best cell culturists when it comes to mesenchymal stem cell production. I think we make the best. And not only from a quantity standpoint, from a quality standpoint. And I think that the cells that we're able to produce here and bank for each person are going to be applicable in so many different ways. What if 10 years from now they can start, making whole organs out of cells that come from your own body? All of these things are possible, but it starts with a good foundation. So that's what we do here at Hope Bio. Yeah.
It's awesome.
And as we sit here in this podcast, I get to face the front door, which is always fun because I never sit in front of the front door. And how many patients have we seen come through today already?
Dozens.
And just seeing the vast array of patients, ages, types come in. It's just amazing to see how it translates. We all have good cells. It's just that we don't have enough of them. And so we are, by evening the playing field, we are opening up opportunities for all these different people to come in. It's just across all these different diseases. It's just amazing, right? Yeah. So how could you not get excited every day just sitting here? It's like a Starbucks. It's like, people coming in constantly. For our clinical trials on our expanded access, everything is free. So they're not, paying customers. But from a banking standpoint, people are commercially banking, and those are real customers. And those, what are they banking for? They're banking for the future. And trusting us that we are on the right track and that accessibility is coming very soon to a corner near you, and that the technology will change everything about how we manage our own health.
I mean, like any good story, there's a lot here, right? Like any story that you hopefully want to continue, there are many future chapters and many things to dive into in more detail, and we are extremely excited to do that. So you should come back the 15th of every month.
Yes, and the dialogue will continue. I don't know. I don't know what we talked about today. A bunch of different things.
Well, but I think, what we set out to do, what we said when we were talking about a podcast was we want to take we have these conversations regularly, but we have them, at the table or in your office. And it's like, how do we bring this to the world? And this is what it is. It's this organic, very exciting, very hope-filled conversation about the technology and what it means and why it matters for anyone we know and love in our community. So we have absolutely provided that today. Okay. And I think it's been very true to us. So stay tuned, and a lot more to come. 15th of every month.
Yes, 15th of every month. This podcast will be on. Yes. And then if you want to hear inspiring stories and up-to-date clinical trial updates, our nurses, our fabulous nurses, David Gonzalez, Sherry Deers, they've got the Hopeful News Network, that podcast hosted on the foundation, on our foundation side. That is every first of every month. So between both of us, both of us groups, we've got every 2 weeks, you've got something hopeful coming out. Yeah.
And we're grateful, to people for tuning in. We're grateful for listening, and we hope you join in the conversation. If you want to join, we are on.
Please ask us questions.
Yes. Send us questions.
Yes. Yeah. Ask me questions, and would love to dive into complicated issues right.
Yeah. Let's do it.
Yeah.
More to come.
Okay. More to come. Thanks, Jan.
Thanks, Donna.